Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video we're going to start off by looking at the theme decks from Scourge, which is the last set in the Onslaught block. Let's just get right into it and look at Goblin Mob, which is the first one. So mono red goblins. Here's the deck list. So we have 29 creatures, a lot of creatures, 1 enchantment, 3 instants, 3 sorceries, 24 land, mana curve off to the side there. So let's start looking at all these goblins. So yeah, it's Goblin Tribal. It's mono red goblins. It's honestly it's pretty good. We have a really good selection of goblins. This is a deck that's benefited from being kind of like released in the third set of the block because it means it has the entire block's card pool to draw from when using goblins, which is really, really good. It means you get like a really good variety of creatures, like it's not having to scrabble around and try and like make up space, which is kind of sometimes a problem that like a tribal deck can have. Or really any deck really that's kind of trying to do a specific gimmick. If it's kind of like released too early in a set, or not released too early in a block maybe, but just like if it hasn't been maybe properly supported, and that is a thing we see maybe in like these early sets. For example, with the morph cards, like how they're split across all 3 sets, whereas say a more modern design would be just have one set with all the morph cards in it, perhaps. But as I say, that's how modern design, modern sets are designed. But we have a bunch of goblins. Let's start talking about them. So we have a single flamestick courier. I think that means every courier has been used in these onslaught decks. So this is the red one from the cycle. Gives goblins +2/+2 in haste. Fairly decent buff giving haste. Although you've got so much stuff in here that already has haste, or gives haste, it feels a little redundant. I always feel I think I've talked about this before, but like haste is obviously a strong ability. Being able to attack and tap the turn it's played is obviously very good. My issue with haste is like it always, after that first turn, it feels a little redundant. I would have quite liked this to be first strike instead, but I think that's getting a little greedy. But I hope you understand what I mean about haste. I'm not saying haste is a bad mechanic. All I'm saying is like you have a very limited window for haste to matter. Because otherwise, like this flamestick courier, say you use it on a goblin that's been out on the board for like a couple of turns already, gets no benefit from that keyword ability, and all the other couriers, give a benefit that is, that's always on, that's always useful. Anyway, I'm talking too much about haste. Flamestick courier, I think, is perfectly fine, like all the couriers. A single gem Panu incinerator. This I feel might be the second best of the gem palms. I like all the gem palms. The black one is my favorite. I really went off on about gem palm polluter in the Zombies Unleashed deck. Gem palm incinerate I think might be the second best one, just because its cycling cost is very cheap. Only 2 mana. And when you cycle it, it does X damage to target creature, where X is the number of goblins in play. So it does count opponents' goblins as well, which matters sometimes. But yeah, you would, you've got so many goblins in the deck. You would definitely play. Like you would never really use this as a creature. You'd pretty much always cycle it. If you had even like say 3 goblins out, you would definitely play a instant that was, for 1 color and 1 red, deal 3 damage to a creature and draw a card. Like you would definitely play that card. Gem Palm Incinerator I think is pretty good. Helps deal with the creatures. That would definitely be a card you'd want to add more of if you are looking to improve the deck. Goblin Warchief, pretty infamous card. This is where he first appears in Scourge, along with all the other Warchiefs. This one I feel is probably, again, one of the better Warchiefs. I still really like Zombie Warchief, just because he gives all zombies Unholy Strength, which is like a really good buff. He gives all your goblins haste, which, as I said, haste is a perfectly good ability. It just stops mattering after 1 turn. But then it lets you play obviously very aggressive. You can play goblins and immediately attack with them. And he makes all your goblins cost 1 less. Goblins are usually very cheap. But this makes them even cheaper, so you can potentially get like 2-3 out in a turn, whereas normally you might get 1 or 2 out. So yeah, Goblin Warchief, pretty good. I mean, the fact that he's like a 2/2 haste on his own for 3 is like all right for the time as well. This is also I might mention with the Warchiefs, but I feel like no, because of course I wouldn't have mentioned with the Warchiefs. This is the first time we're seeing them. They're in Scourge, and this is the first Scourge deck we're looking at. This feels like the first. This feels like the beginning of these tribal effects. Or card effects really only starting to affect your side of the board, because it says, like goblins you control have haste, goblin spells you play cost 1 less. Whereas, like I feel like if this was in an older set, it would be affect everyone's goblins, which would obviously be a much worse card. But yeah, Goblin Warchief, super good. And then a single reckless one. This is the Goblin avatar of the cycle. So I think we've seen. No, we haven't seen the blue one. The blue one never got into any deck, which is a shame, because it's kind of cool. It has Morph and it cares about wizards. But yeah, reckless one. XX with haste, power and toughness is equal to the number of goblins play. You have a bunch of goblins, it's going to come down, usually be something like even if this has like at least 4 goblins out, it counts itself. Swing with a 4/4 haste, it's 4 mana. That's pretty good. Yeah, light reckless one. So really some good goblins to start off with here. Let's move on to some some more really good goblins. So 2 goblin sledders, 1 red mana for a 1/1. Sacrifice a goblin, target creature gets +1/+1 till end turn. Yep, pretty good. You can just swing with a bunch of goblins. Any that get blocked, you can just sacrifice them, instant speed, no cost, which is amazing to pump up the ones that that did get through. So yep, goblin sledder, super good. 2 of them, great. I think that's a functional reprint over. I think there was a goblin exactly like this in Tempest block, not Mog Fanatic, Mog Raider maybe. It's very similar. Anyway, Siege Gang Commander is one of the rares. Siege Gang Commander is great. I remember people going nuts for this card when it was first released. So and it's still, I think, really good today. 5 mana for a 2/2. Makes 3 1/1 red goblins when it enters the battlefield, and you can pay 1 cost 1 red, sacrifice a goblin, does 2 damage to target creature or player, turns all your goblins into shock, basically. Super good. There's just I can't really beat around the bush on that. Siege Gang Commander, super good goblin card. This is like a great way to close out a game. The fact that it just makes 5 power, it puts 5 power on the board itself, and it's 3 tokens as well, is super good. Even if it just did that, I think it would be fine. But the fact you can pay 2 mana, turn a goblin into a shock, is really good. Ideally you'd play this turn 5, and then turn 6 you'd play a land. You've got 6 mana open. You could then just immediately sacrifice those 3 goblin creatures, those goblin tokens you've made to do 6 damage. Really good way just to finish out a game. If you've attacked all your goblins, got your opponent down to single digits, and then sacrifice everything to Siege Gang Commander, do a load of damage. Yeah, super good card. Skirk Drill Sergeant, 2 mana for a 2/1, which is 2/1. For 2 with an ability, which is actually really good for the time. So whenever it or another goblin dies, it counts your opponent goblins as well, you can pay 2 cards in a red. If you do, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a goblin, goes straight into play, otherwise it goes into your graveyard. You've got so many goblins in this deck. They're going to be dying a lot because you've got sacrifice effects, and also if you're just being aggressive with them, just leaving open mana to do this ability. Which doesn't require him to tap it. It's a triggered ability, and the chance just to get a free goblin. Well, it's not free. You're paying 3 mana for it. But yeah, again, I think that's like a really good ability. And if you don't hit a goblin, which is quite rare, then it's potentially a dead card, like a land, which goes into your graveyard, and then it's fine. Then maybe next turn you draw something better. Anyway, and a single Sparksmith, so 2 mana for a 1/1. Tap, does X damage to target creature, X damage to you, where X is the number of goblins in play. Can be a little painful if it hurts you, obviously, but the fact that it can do potentially so much damage to an enemy creature, just by tapping, again, no other cost apart from tapping. You could kill off potentially really big creatures with this. So your opponent drops a 6/6 or a 7/7. You could use Sparksmith if you got a load of goblins, kill that kill that beast, yeah, you're going to take like 7 damage, but like you were going to potentially take 7 damage from it hitting you anyway if you didn't deal with it. So it's kind of like I feel like it's a fair trade. Just having the option to do that is really good. So yeah, Sparksmith again, super good, and it's common as well, which seems absolutely mad to me. Anyway, so some tricksy goblins here. So Morph Goblins. So 2 Goblin Taskmasters, 1/1 for 1 red mana. 1 cost 1 red. Target Goblin gets +1/+0 turn turn. It has Morph for a single red mana. Like perfectly okay. You know, a little boring, but you know, perfectly okay. Just to have that pump ability. 2 Skirt Commandos, 3 mana for a 2/1. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you can have it do 2 damage to a creature that player controls. It has Morph, so you can sneak it through while it's face down, flip it face up. It does 2 damage to the opponent if they've let it through, and then it shocks something else. Yeah, and also like this is one where yeah, this has kind of like got a big block me sign on it because your opponent's not going to let it through and do it shock something. This is this is like a good decoy goblin once it's out, I think. 2 Skirt Marauder, 2/1 for 2, but if you morph it, it does shock again, like perfectly fine. It's nice that you could play this just as a 2/1 for 2. If you really needed to, and that's fine. You know, a 2/1 for 2 at this time in the game is perfectly fine for red. You know, it doesn't have a drawback or anything. It's fine. And 2 Skirk Volcanus, so 4 mana for a 3/1. Does have more, but you have to sacrifice 2 mountains, which is can be good or bad. The fact that it's essentially free, you can tap out and then still do its morph cost is, you know, at least you have that option. When it morphs, it basically does Arc Lightning. Well, not quite Arc Lightning because it only hit creatures, but the fact that you could potentially get a 3-for-1 with this, and I say requires to sacrifice 2 mountains, but you know you're playing goblins. You know, at some point you can really get by. Once you've hit like 5 lands, you're fine. Yeah, any lands after that are just kind of excess to requirements. And then filling out the ranks are a few. These are just like kind of a random grab bag of goblins. So 3 Goblin Brigands, which is 2 mana for a 2/2. It has to attack every turn if able. It's fine. I mean, obviously that's not a great drawback. Not a great drawback. Not a great ability. It is a drawback, obviously. But for the time, red just didn't get 2/2s for 2 with no drawback. So. This is fine, and plus, it's a goblin that at least it forces you to be aggressive with it. Goblin Psychopath, I'm not so crazy on. It's obviously well costed at 4 mana for a 5/5, but whenever it attacks or blocks, you flip a coin. If you lose the flip, you take the damage it was going to deal, which is not great. I think this is one of the few like really bad cards in here. I think you would have cut this. Even so, you could argue like, oh, it's a 50-50 chance either way. It's okay. And 5/5 is like fairly decent size. This is one you could like not attack with it, just leave it, just in case you really want to take the chance, I suppose. So not completely terrible and awful, but like also not great. There's better goblins. 2 Goblin Grapplers, I really like this. 1 mana for a 1/1. Has Provoke, which means it can, when it attacks, it can force a creature to block it, which is really nice. It stops it blocking your other goblins that you want to get through. 2 Goblin Sky Raiders. This is your very limited way of dealing with flying creatures, or blocking flying creatures, really. And it has, it's some evasion as well. It's basically like a 3 mana Stormcrow. It's just a 1/2 with flying, which is obviously very overcosted, but it's in red. Normally the red flyers you normally get are obviously super expensive dragons, so to get a goblin with flying, you have to pay a little extra for that. Single Nosy Goblin, 3 mana for a 2/1. You can tap and sacrifice it, destroy a face down creature, which is obviously quite a niche ability, but can be useful. It's fine. And then 3 Rock Jockeys, so 3 mana for 3/3. Which is, that's really well costed, except you can't cast it if you've played a land this turn, and you can't play lands if in the turn you've cast it. So really this isn't a turn 3 drop, because if you play your 3rd mountain, now you can't do Rock Jockey. So you have to wait till really turn 4 to play it, but then you're like a land behind, I suppose. It's okay. It's quite an interesting drawback, honestly. Like, it is. I mean, it is a drawback, but at least it's an interesting one that you don't really see that often. This whole kind of like stopping you playing lands when you cast it. But yeah, it's fine. It's obviously very aggressively costed. Yeah, once it's on the board, it's fine. It's one of your bigger goblins. And then moving on, we've just got like some spells to close it off. So we have 2 Carbonizers. I think this is really good, actually. Well, not really good. Actually, no, for the time, it was really good, I think. So 3 mana instant. Deal 3 damage to target creature or player. A creature can't be regenerated this turn, and if it would die, it gets exiled instead. So it's basically like a mini Disintegrate, and Disintegrate is like a perfectly good card. Yeah, I think this is good. I think this is a perfectly good burn spell. Single Enrage, target creature gets +X/+0 stand turn, so it's like a red Howl from Beyond. So this marks the point in the game where Howl from Beyond is now a red card, as it should be. Yep, it's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine combat trick. 2 Goblin Warstrike. This is the real money though. So 1 red mana sorcery does damage equal to the number of goblins you control to target player. If I'd say even have 3 or 4 out. I mean, if you have 3 goblins out, this is Lava Spike. If you have more than 3 goblins out, this is super efficient as a burn spell. Again, like a really good way to end the game. You attack with a bunch of goblins. You say you do a load of damage. You do a Goblin Warstrike, maybe say another maybe 4 or 5 damage, and then you have CJ and Commander do the last bits of damage there. Yeah, Goblin Warstrike, super good. And then Wave of Indifference, another X spell here. X target creatures can't block this turn. Again, really good way for your goblins to get through and do damage. And the other rare of the deck is Sulfuric Vortex, which is a 3 mana enchantment. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, Sulfuric Vortex does 2 damage to that player, and players can't gain life. So fits this theme of being like super aggressive. It's going to keep chipping away at everyone. It's going to force like really aggressive play. Yeah, super good. I really wish they'd leaned into it even more by just saying like, damage dealt by Sulfuric Vortex can't be prevented or something, or just damage can't be prevented full stop. But yeah, as it is, that's still pretty good. And then 2 Goblin Burrows. Taps to give you colorless, or 1 colors and 1 red. Tap. A goblin gets +2/+0 turn. That's a really good buff to have, like on a non-basic land. Yeah, that's really good. And 2 Forgotten Caves, which is just the cycling land. So yeah, what could have been? So overall, I do think this deck is actually really good. It's got obviously a really strong theme, which is goblins. Goblins are historically like a very good tribe, because they usually have like a lot of synergy with each other. They usually have very crazy good abilities. So I do think this deck is actually honestly almost perfectly fine as it is. There's just a few cards I was like a little bit confused why they weren't included. Goblin Lookout I think could have been perfect in here, like 2 mana for a 1/2. Tap, sacrifice goblin, all your goblins get +2/+0 to turn. Like that's really good. That's a really good buff. Essentially turns like a goblin token into Trumpet Blast, which is super good. It can do himself. He can sacrifice himself as well, which is good. Warbreak Trumpeter is a morph goblin that just creates goblin tokens. So you want to flood the board with more goblins. Brightstone Ritual, really surprised this wasn't in here. Like a one mana instant to give you red mana equal to the number of goblins in play. Yeah, really surprised that wasn't in here because it obviously goes like super well. Just make a bunch of mana. You've got like some X spells. You've got like goblins with mana abilities. Or not mana abilities, ability you pay mana for, you know what I mean. And Crown of Fury, which I've ended up suggesting a lot in these Onslaught block decks, honestly, like these crowns. Was not expecting to talk about these crowns so much. But yeah, it's just, it's a good tribal effect. Fits well in any tribal deck. Give all your goblins +1/+0 and first strike to end turn. Yeah. But I say the deck is, I think, absolutely fine without these cards in it. So, in summary, yeah, I think this one's really good. This, I would say, is definitely... Is it definitely? Yeah, it is definitely the best Scourge deck. Probably one of the stronger ones in the whole block, honestly. So yeah, like I would have been super happy to have this one. The goblins like play them and just like play really aggressively, just completely like bulldoze through people with horde of goblins. Goblins are great, aren't they? So yeah, that's what I think of it. Like, I didn't actually own this deck, which is a shame because I would have liked to. But did you have this deck and did you play it? Did you make changes to it? Did you have any really fun games with it? Did you do as I've sort of expected it to work? Like just attack with a bunch of goblins and Goblin Warstrike and Siege Gang Commander to finish things off. Yeah, man, really excited talking about goblins. But yeah, stick a comment below, and I'll be back next time to talk about another Scourge themed deck. But until then, thank you for watching and listening, and have a great day.